Distance, okay. So I'm going to start off. I'm the industry partner in all of this. So I'm just going to describe the application process as well as my experience as an industry partner and what sorts of things benefited me throughout the process, and just trying to give a case study for everybody else in the audience within industry that might want to get some of this action themselves, because as Cheryl mentioned, there's several really important benefits to the program, and it's, as she said, has greatly accelerated at least our roadmap into the market. So just a bit about us specifically. So Thin Ice technology is a wearable weight loss technology. We integrate it right into clothing. So it helps you lose weight throughout the day without you having to do anything different. We use cold temperatures. We stimulate specific parts of your body, which allows you to lose weight through thermogenesis, creation of body heat. And the problem that we ran into, because the first real stumbling block that forced us to seek help from academia, was realizing that the industry just didn't have the data available within academia to answer the questions that we needed. So for us specifically, there's a bit of a limitation in terms of where on the body the stimulation is happening and what response there is physiologically in the brown adipose tissue, which is the active tissue that we stimulate with our products. So we had to find a way to figure out, maybe with our own studies, what would happen when we stimulated specific parts of the body, such as the feet. This is just kind of a graphic of our insole. We use these little cooling chips inside that allow you to stimulate the areas that we predict will cause the most response, but predictions are only so valuable. So I ended up meeting Cheryl through a fellow entrepreneur who had got a lot of value from the experience with Innovation York. So I decided definitely wanted to test it out myself. I didn't have very much financing at the time, so it seemed like a perfect fit. So you just have a series of consultation calls and meetings. The first one, I'm sure, is just to see if you're worth Cheryl's time. And then it's more of a process of figuring out what your specific needs are. So once you've identified those specific needs, it really moves on to Cheryl's specialty, which is matchmaking and chemistry. So Cheryl works her magic at this point, and she combs those 1,400 partners within 1,400 researchers within the university, kind of deciding, based on three main criteria, what the right fit is. So, the needs of the project obviously come first. What does the industry partner need to achieve? And the expertise of the candidates is the natural, connection there. But there's also the funding opportunities, because there are many options, and some of them are more relevant than others for different projects. For us, it turned out to be NSERC, which we targeted, but there's many options out there, and it's really part of the matchmaking process as well, because if there's more money to be had, then maybe there's better matches. And in early stage companies, that's one of the big factors. So once you've decided these are the right partners for you, this is the research we need done, we have a roadmap, it's really about just starting the application process, which is definitely comprehensive. There's a lot of sharing of documentation, deciding what can the academic partners handle, what can the industry partners handle, who has the information to just get it all done. So there's definitely a lot of virtual collaboration, making sure that you're covering all your bases and you're giving the government body the information they need to make a proper decision. So once you submit that, the job might not be quite done yet, because there sometimes are requests for a little bit more information or clarifying certain things, just a little bit more vetting. So hopefully once that whole process is done, the research can finally start and the real fun begins. So that's my experience with York. I'm going to introduce one of my collaborators.
So basically, after Adam has talked about the industry perspective, I myself, Sunny, and Pouya would like to talk about the perspective from the academic researcher. So basically, we need to think about where to start first when we think of industrial collaboration. And when we think of this, the first thing, as an academic researcher, we want to connect ourselves to Innovation York, which has the connection to the industry. In order to do so, what we have to do is we have to share our research domain. We need to explain what we are doing in our daily research to, let's say, Cheryl, so that whenever an opportunity comes, she know where to find us and who in the university will be able to help the industry partners. And then in order to do that, there are a couple of different things that we normally do. First of all, we initiate by email and explain to Cheryl what we are doing in our research. And then we can set up some meeting. And then we sometimes also provide a, let's say, one-page, two-page research profile to Cheryl in order to explain what we are doing, so that whenever the industry partner come, she know where to find us. And Then the other thing is when we think about collaboration, and one thing that is very important to all the academic researchers is we have to be open-minded. Whenever the opportunity comes, when we look at the research problem, the first impression maybe it's not really directly related to what we are doing in our research right away. But when we try to dig out more information, when we try to think deeper into the research problem, there are lots of chance we'll be able to find some ways to help the company to contribute to the research problem. That is something that is extremely important for the academic researcher. Don't always just look at it and think, oh, it's not related to my research. When you spend more time to understand more, there are always new ways for you to find some contribution that you can provide to the company.
One thing I would like to mention is, oh, I think I'm loud enough, but that's fine. Okay. So one thing that I would like to mention is like funding for the academic fellows nowadays, fortunately or unfortunately, has become in Canada very industry oriented. So I think the approach has changed, and a lot of academic people, it's a two-way process. A lot of academic people right now are also looking for establishing industrial connections. It's not all about industry coming to the university and saying that we have this position or this project and we're looking for academic researcher. It's really us as well who want to establish new connections with the industry because we want to expand on the research enterprise that we have, right? So for that, I think it's important for the new faculty members and even for the existing established faculty members to reach out and really introduce their availability for taking up new projects with the industry and kind of expressing their interest. So one way is pretty much you approach the industry yourself as a new researcher and start negotiating different kind of projects and funding avenues with them. Or what I have found, or what we have found more efficient, is really reaching out to York, Innovation York, and introducing your research through a one-pager or two-pager research summary to Cheryl, and she can pretty much tap into the research, to the resources that she has, and I can assure you that it would work much more efficiently. You would find more relevant researchers in the industry or more projects in the industry that are close to your research area. I completely agree with Sunny saying that a project in the beginning might not really seem directly relevant to your research. For example, you're doing a pure fundamental research and the project in hand is pretty applied. So do not give up on that, I would say. One recommendation, get engaged into the discussion with the company and see how you can contribute to the project itself.
And then, so again, one important thing at the initial stage is when you start a new collaboration or potential collaboration with company, it is always important for you to learn about the company. It can be through some email discussion with the company partners. It can be through like web searching their website. The important thing is we need to understand what they're doing in their daily operation. Are they making any particular products? Are they providing any particular services? What kind of clients they have? In that case, it will provide you more information to think about how you can contribute to their research problem at the end. And obviously, let's say when Cheryl talked to us and provide us some new opportunity that we find may be a potential collaboration in the future, what we have to do is, after talking to the company, maybe through the phone, through some initial email discussion, we need to initiate a meeting. And when in the meeting, these kind of meeting, what I would say is for academic researcher, the first thing you want to think about is try to provide more information, try to explain what you can bring to the company, how you can help them, what kind of research you're doing that may be relevant to their research problem so that they understand more about you. Don't always just think about the funding, the money. I think it is important for you to establish some of the understanding, mutual understanding about what they are looking for and also what you can provide them. And try to always prepare for some questions related to the research problem. related to some of the company-related question, then try to find out more information through these meetings so that you know at the end whether you can help them just by your own research group, or you may also want to think about whether you can look for some other expertise within the university as a team to help the company. That's what we have been doing in this partnership here.
Yeah, so like as an example, with the work that we did with Adam, so initially when was a reach out to us, there was like some overarching introduction of the project. So what I usually do is I ask for more information from Cheryl, and she's nice enough to ask the company to provide more information about the project. So what I usually do, and I kind of works for me very well, is before you go and get engaged with the company, you need to tap into a lot of different resources, go to their website, try to find out if they have published any papers out there with with academic collaborators. So read about the project and kind of bring yourself up to date with the topic, and then I would say initiate that meeting. So in that meeting, you can kind of you can be assured that you know enough information about the project, and you can prepare for the meeting, and relate your kind of research project to the project that you got in hand. And as Sunny is mentioning, like try to contribute, bring to the meeting what you can do for the industry. It's not always industry reaching out to you with detailed research question. You might have to really bring up the research question yourself. So think about developing more detailed research questions and trying to come up with research directions that you can start doing and addressing those questions, which overall lead into something that the company might be in an applied manner kind of interested in.
So to add on that, basically, once we have some information about the research problem that the company is looking for us to help them, as what Pouya mentioned, we may have to try to provide the company a little bit more information about maybe how this can be related to some of the fundamental research for our fundamental research direction. How does it can give out some potential outcome that can definitely help the research problem. That's something is important as an academic researcher need to keep in mind, I would say. So basically, the important message to, let's say, to all the academic researchers for when you look for new collaboration, it is always important for you to make the company understand how you can contribute your value to the research work. And as an academic researcher, we also need to understand what are the resources that are available out there to help us to collaborate with the company in order to help the company. And these resources, of course, we can classify into different families. From the university, there are certain resources that we can look for. And then from the company, we need to understand what kind of resources we can get from the company in order to deal with the research problem. And obviously, we also need to understand the government or some funding agencies' resources. We need to understand the criteria and so on. With all these understanding of the resources, it will be better for us to plan out how to explain the scenario to the company so that they understand how we can work together in a collaborative way to help each other to achieve the goal that we set together.
Yeah, so with regards to the university resources that Sunny was talking about, I think one of the most important advantages that universities, and especially York University, can offer is there are a lot of relevant expertise inside one campus. So as an academic researcher, you don't really want, when you go to that meeting with the company, you don't want to really think about yourself and your research direction, how you can independently by yourself contribute to that research. Always think about your colleagues. It's good to know about your research, the research that is going on in York University, in your department, in your faculty, and I really kind of encourage reaching out to different faculties, faculty of science, perhaps art and business, to know what people around you are doing. So when you go to that meeting, you can establish a lot of connections through your research with the company, and you can be able to, if there is a need, for example, for business development, for knowledge mobilization, for looking into scientific and engineering problems, you can be able to think about, colleagues who can come into the project and contribute. One of the advantages in terms of resources is HQP. So the company has an advantage of tapping into hiring master's students, PhD students, postdoc students who can work with the company and provide them with services. The cost is obviously much lower. Obviously, as Cheryl was mentioning, there is access to state-of-the-art facilities and equipment at university that is not really doable if the company wants to go outside and purchase those equipments. And there's services at York University such as technology transfer, IP, patent development, through connections with Mars and Innovation New York. So there's a lot of advantages in terms of the resources that university can provide.
And in terms of the company resources, of course, whenever we apply for grants, we need to get some resources from the company in order to do so. When we think about these resources, of course, we can think about in-kind versus the cash. Although cash is very important, I would say, but at the end, for some of the, let's say, startup company, maybe initially it is difficult to provide some cash contribution. We can always think about other ways to get some contribution from the company so that we can apply for some particular grant. In terms of in-kind contribution, we can think about, let's say, the time or the expertise from the company personnel. They can attend some meeting, they can provide some technical information to help the research. Those are actually good contribution that can help to have a good collaboration at the end. And then sometimes the company may also have some particular processing equipment, characterization equipment that we can access during the research, and those can be considered as good in-kind contribution as well. And then of course they can provide some material, some consumable that will be useful for the daily research that we are doing. And then on top of this, of course, we also need to understand what are out there from the funding agency, from the government, in terms of the support that can help both the researcher and the company. And in order to do this, I would say, as an academic researcher, we shouldn't just wait for the opportunity to come and start to find out what are the funding opportunity out there. We need to always be prepared and understand what are the available grant programs out there that can be used for collaboration with industry. We need to educate ourselves so that whenever the opportunity comes, we can provide the information to let them know how we can help them to get these resources to solve the research problem. And for these grant programs, what we have to do is we need to understand the criteria. Let's say for some program, it may be good for startup companies, some program, it may be good for national company and so on. So there are many different types of grants. We need to understand the criteria for each of them so that we know for when the opportunity comes, which one we can look into in order to find out more information to help the company. And also, there are quite lots of these programs. We can do a lot of mix and mix in order to maximize the leverage, in order to get the best resources to help the company. And again, we need to understand these programs in order to do so. Of course, in the later part of today's event, there will be a lot more information that will be provided to you related to these possibility. And another thing I want to emphasize is when we think about the funding opportunity, to help the company, we don't just think about the short term. We need to think about the long term as well. Maybe immediately we can figure out some small grants that can help the immediate needs. But at the same time, we want to explain to the company what are the long-term strategy we can work together in order to help them to secure some long-term research support for the long-term vision for them. And so that will be something that is important. We always need to provide the different scenarios to the company to let them understand what are the available options based on the resources we have right now. And then based on that, we can spend more time to discuss and find out which scenario will be best to help the company in terms of helping them to solve the research problem.
Just got to do it very short. So I just wanted to tell the story of us pretty much to wrap it up. So as Adam was mentioning, he came to the university with a question that we want to develop a cooling vest that a human can wear and cool the body and lose weight. But then what we kind of realized inside between all three of us or four of us was the fact that, you know, this study has not been kind of conducted with enough background support in terms of like preclinical studies on animal models, and so on and so forth. So we kind of approached him and saying that you need to kind of do perhaps some animal-based studies on rat models. So it became a question of, you know, science, because you have now animal models, and become a question of, you know, technology. You need a cooling vest. And there's a connection in between these two. So we were able to find like researchers in the Department of Biology who are working on the specific tissues and on the rat models and the biology and the background of that. And kind of I was the person who was working on, you know, thermal management and developing devices for cooling and maintaining temperatures of regions. And we said there should be a connection between these two, right? So I have a device, our biologist has an animal model, but we need a material to put them together. We need a material who has like a conductivity, which is a superconductive material. So we approached Sunny because Sunny is a material person, right? So it worked out very great. We bring in people from science, from engineering, from material science, and we kind of worked out, you know, the contribution that a company can make, whether it's cash or in kind. At the end of the day, we're able to identify the funding package that we can go for, and I think it's going to be a fantastic project in the future with expansion and probably going to further funding grants from NSERC, from OCE, and other funding agencies. So this was pretty much the story that we came together and put the application on. So I think with that being said, we'd be happy to answer any questions, if any.
Handle publishing rights? Like if you want to publish the research, do all three of you have to be authors, or?
Well, publication, well, first of all, it depends also, it highly depends on the company. Obviously, the academic people, their interest is in publication. Another factor is, well, so to start with, you just negotiate it with your company and see what their opinion is. Another thing is, it all depends on the funding program that you apply for. Some funding programs, in terms of IP, I'm basically talking about right now, and patenting and intellectual property, some kind of fundings, you know, they restrict yourself and say all the IP belongs to the company. Some other funding grants would just let you and the company decide on the IP issue. But with regards to publication, this is something that you negotiate upfront with the company, and I really recommend talking to Innovation York and developing like a letter of understanding and signing it before you start the project, and mention the publication agreement between you and the company.
Let me add, thank you, and let me add to that, there will always be publications from each research project. Trade secrets will be protected for the company because they don't want their secret sauce let out, but that does not preclude the use of publishing, because that's what universities do. And that's understood right from the beginning, and we work with the companies to make sure that they're protected while our researchers have the ability to publish. Can you go to the, oh, and there's a question?
I just have a quick question in terms of the actual practical process. Is it typically that a researcher or a team of researchers is assigned to a client, to a company, or is it a one-to-one ratio, or does it happen where the researchers would work on several projects at the same time? And I guess the second part of the question is, in terms of accountability, in terms of delivering and respecting timelines, how do you manage that with industry partners?
There are no hard and fast rules around how many projects a researcher can work on. It depends on their capacity. Keep in mind, what is generally happening with these projects is that there's a master's, PhD, or postdoc student doing the work under the joint supervision of the faculty member and someone from the company. So depending on the number of students they're supervising and what their capacity is, how many projects they can work on. And regarding timelines, because it's a collaborative research project, the company is actually right in there along the whole way. So that helps to keep the project focused on what the company is looking for and timelines moving along. And there are also conditions for the grants. They have specific timeframes within
Right.
which the work must be accomplished.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, and there are more answers.
Yeah, just in regards to the timeline, as Cheryl mentioned in her talk, you don't want to approach Innovation New York with a project you need done like tomorrow or within a couple weeks. It's really the stuff that you want to know long term that's going to add a lot of value to maybe your marketing long term, or your claims that you can make about the product and add validity to those. So we didn't approach Innovation New York with something we needed done very quickly. It's something that's going to be valuable information as we go forward and try to bolster our brand and all these sorts of things. So keep that in mind if you're an industry partner seeking help as well.
One quick thing about, to our industry colleagues. One thing that I think there's missing in terms of communication between the academic people and university people is the fact that, you come to an academic person and you ask for help, so we can hire different type of highly qualified personnel, such as master's students, PhD students, and postdoctoral fellows to conduct the project. But we need to kind of deliver this message that the learning curve that is associated with training of a master's student is obviously taking a longer time compared to a PDF student. So a postdoctoral fellow can pretty much come in and start producing results for the company and for the advisor, I would say the next 1 or 2 months. But you need to spend perhaps 3-4 months on a master's student to train that person. Now, obviously, productivity for a postdoc is much higher, but the cost for a postdoctoral fellow is also much higher. There's a question between the cost, the time, and the type of HQP that you get into the program. With current funding programs that are out there, I would say in order to get a PDF fellow to come in and work on a project, there must be some sort of cash contribution, minimum cash contribution from the company, so we inside the university can leverage that money and produce a higher funding package that we can hire a postdoctoral fellow and produce results for you in 6 months to 1 year. But if you're looking at a PhD, that productivity might go to 1 to 2 years. Master's students would be pretty much around 2 years or so, I would say so.
Depending on project.
Yeah.
So one more quick comment. Actually, I want to go back to a comment about the publication as well. When we talk about publication, again, we have to have some agreement from the company about what we are going to publish. Whenever we publish, we show the paper to them first. But one thing I want to let the potential industry partner knows is when we think of publication, we can think of also conference publication, which is another very good avenue to promote the company. I had some experience working with another company. They actually initiate and want me to help them to publish in the conference so that it can promote to their company. Because for a lot of conferences that I'm attending, actually there may be 30% or even 50% of the people are from the industry. And in that case, it is basically a very good way to market a company, market your new technology, and so on.
Hello. I've worked with multiple other universities for a project that I've had. One of the issues that I've had was that they said that if the research was done within the university, that they own the IP.
There are two basic approaches to intellectual property in Canada. In layman's terms, there is the approach where it's owned by the university and is negotiated at a university level. And they have an office that does these negotiations. The second model is where it's called the inventor-owned approach to life in layman's terms, where whoever does the work is the owner of the IP and the negotiation happens at the inventor level. That's a much more entrepreneurial approach to life. It's the Waterloo model that you might be familiar with, and that's the one that York University follows. We know that companies do not want to work with the university if they're not going to have access to the IP. There's no point. So we recognize that, and we have the discussion right at the very beginning about any intellectual property that's developed. Anything that comes into the project belongs to the company. We don't make any claims, like nothing. But anything that's developed, we talk about, I don't know, do you want to have a license agreement to do it? Or the researcher may say, I'm not in that. I don't want any of it. You take the IP. I'm just going to be doing my research. Or they might be saying things like, you take it for your industry and I'll use it in a non-competing industry. It can be anything. We do have an agreements group. We can turn something around pretty quickly. We have not yet found that to be a stumbling block, but at a minimum, The researcher has to be able to continue their research stream. They can't be blocked by doing a collaborative project with industry, and they have to be able to publish. One thing I need to add is sometimes the results are not what a company is hoping for, especially if it's something they're hoping to use to validate their product. And that's going to be published also. So it's something for a company to keep in mind. That's often more of a problem when you're talking like a medical device, but it could apply to anything. So does that answer your question though, about IP?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Because I know in the other model it can take a couple of years sometimes to negotiate something. With us it's like immediate. And are there any other questions? Yeah. Can you walk to the microphone, please? And introduce yourself, if you may.
My name is Mike Kandick. I have a short question. Maybe I missed something regarding timelines. When there's a research done at university, do they go at their own pace? Sometimes industry have their own timeline, and it has to be followed. How is that coordinated?
Okay, at the very beginning, it takes a few weeks to find a researcher. Then you meet with the researcher to make sure you're comfortable. Well, I'd send you their background. You see if it looks like a fit, then you have a meeting. To apply for the government grant, it usually takes about 6 or 8 weeks for that process to get through the approval and to write the application. We take the lead on writing the application, but it still takes some time. And during the time that's going on, the researcher, if they don't already have a student in mind for doing the project, will be looking for one. And then for the actual executing on the research, once the grant is approved, the research can start and move forward. And because it's jointly supervised, you can push for the timeline. But you got to figure it's a few months at the very beginning because you got to find a person, get the grant approved.
At the beginning, yes, I understand. But once it's all approved and from where to go,
it depends what your size of project is. We work on projects from 4 months duration to 5 years. So it just depends what your project needs are.
But there is a flexibility, of course.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And to that end, we work with grants that are from $15,000 all the way up to, multi-year. So
Okay.
I don't recommend starting with a multi-million-dollar grant if you haven't worked with us before, but it's certainly possible.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.